Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are going to talk about a specific kind of suffering that I think everyone listening has experienced. It's the paradox of optimization. You know the moment. You're sitting there doing some mundane digital chore. Maybe you're organizing files or, I don't know, manually backing up photos, and you think, I am wasting my life. I should automate this.
Oh, yeah. It's the siren song of efficiency, right? If I
Yeah.
spend 5 hours writing a script today, I'll save 5 minutes every day for the rest of my life.
Right. It's simple math, but then, reality hits. You spend the whole weekend building this beautiful, complex system. It's got dashboards, it triggers webhooks. Maybe you even tie in some AI agent, and then...
And then you spend the next 6 months debugging the system instead of
Right.
actually doing the work.
Yes.
We call that automation paralysis, where the maintenance of the tool just completely outweighs the value of the task. You end up creating a Rube Goldberg machine just to take out the digital trash.
And it's usually because we over-engineer it. We want
Yeah.
it to be smart, so we make it fragile.
Exactly. We do.
And that is why today's stack is so refreshing. We are stripping it all back. We are looking at an article from XDA developers published just yesterday, February 5th, 2026. It's by Jeff Butts, and the title is, I Automated Half My Digital Life with Just a Raspberry Pi and Cron Jobs.
I loved this piece. It's fascinating because it runs completely counter to the tech narrative of 2026. I mean, we're living in the age of agentic AI, massive cloud platforms, and smart everything. And here's this guy saying, no, I'm going to use a script scheduler from the 1970s and a cheap circuit board to run my life.
And Jeff isn't a Luddite. His bio jumps out immediately. He's an IT veteran pre-internet era with degrees in both English and computing. That is a rare mix. You usually get the code or the pros, not both.
It gives him such a unique perspective. He talks about having that old school sysadmin energy.
Yeah.
He admits he used to want the sprawling platform for his home lab. You know, the blinking lights, the complex logic, the stuff that looks cool on a monitor. But he hit a wall. He realized he didn't need a smart home. He needed a reliable home.
So he turns to the Raspberry Pi 4, the humble hero of our story.
Truly. And looking at the specs he lists, ARM Cortex-A72, maybe 4 or 8 gigs of RAM, gigabit Ethernet. By modern standards, the smartwatch on your wrist might be punchier in some metrics, but that's the point. It's low power, it's quiet, and it just sits in a corner and does its job.
So the mission for this deep dive is to explore why those low-power constraints, and specifically the use of this thing called cron, might actually be the superior way to handle your digital life. We're going to look at the specific recipes Jeff used to reclaim his mental bandwidth. But first, we have to talk philosophy. Jeff uses a phrase to describe cron jobs that I absolutely loved. He calls them aggressively unromantic.
There's the perfect framing for it.
But for the listeners who haven't spent their lives inside a Linux terminal, can we define cron? What exactly are we talking about here?
Sure, think of cron as the alarm clock for your computer, but an alarm clock that can do chores.
Yeah.
It's a time-based job scheduler in Unix-like systems. It's been around since the 70s. It doesn't have a user interface. It doesn't have drag and drop.
Nothing fancy.
Nothing. It's a text file. You write a line that essentially says, at 3 a.m., run this script. That's it. It is brutally simple.
And in a world of flashy apps, that sounds archaic. But Jeff argues that for a Raspberry Pi, which is this tiny computer that just sits there, cron is the killer app. He says, the device stays on, the schedule stays simple.
And there's a psychological layer here that's really important. The author talks about trust. This is the insight that separates tinkering from actual automation. Trust is what turns that thought, I should automate this, into the feeling it's handled.
See, I think that's where most of my automations fail. I set them up, but I don't really trust them. I'll set up an auto backup, but then I'll check the folder every day just to make sure it's there.
Which completely defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
And why don't you trust them? Usually it's because of complexity. If you have an automation that relies on an API connecting to a cloud service, which triggers a webhook, which talks to your PC, I mean, if one link in that chain snaps, the whole thing dies.
And then I'm spending my Saturday fixing the API key.
Right. And the moment you check your automation, it's not automation anymore. It's just a new management job. Jeff's point is that with cron and a Pi, you eliminate the chain. The script is local. The file system is local. If it breaks, there's only one place to look. And that simplicity breeds trust. He says he's not trying to build a second brain. He says he's just emptying the junk drawer.
I love that visualization, emptying the junk drawer. So let's open this junk drawer and look at what he's actually doing. He categorizes his automation into a few buckets. The first one he calls system admin tasks. I call these the vegetables. You have to eat them, but nobody gets excited about them.
The necessary evils.
Mm.
Backups, updates, and cleanup.
Let's drill into backups. Everyone knows they should back up. Jeff mentions taking snapshots of key folders and exporting configurations, but he drops a specific tactic here called staggering jobs.
This is a crucial technical detail, and it really shows his experience.
Why does it matter so much? Why not just set everything to run at 3 a.m. when I'm asleep?
Because of the hardware. A Raspberry Pi 4 is a great device, but it has limited resources. It often shares bandwidth between USB and Ethernet depending on the board architecture, and the CPU, the Cortex-A72, can only handle so much I/O or input-output at once. If you schedule your photo backup, your server backup, and your database dump all at exactly 3:00 a.m., you create a digital traffic jam.
The system chokes.
It creates a bottleneck, the CPU spikes, the disk slows to a crawl, and sometimes the system becomes unresponsive or even crashes. Staggering just means you set one for 3.0, one for 3.15, one for 3.45. It keeps the system calm, as Jeff puts it. It ensures the Pi is never sweating.
And the result is that he stopped thinking about them, which is just the highest compliment you can give a sysadmin tool.
Exactly.
Okay, moving to the next vegetable. Updates. Now, this is the one that scares me. Auto-update is a dirty word in my house. I've had too many drivers break or software features just disappear because I let the system update itself while I wasn't looking.
And Jeff calls this the danger zone for a reason. Linux package managers are generally reliable, but dependencies change. If an update requires a user prompt like, "Do you accept this license?" or if it needs to uninstall a conflict, a silent background script isn't going to know what to do. It'll just hang or fail.
So what's the fix? He doesn't just turn it off, right?
He adopts a really nuanced strategy for non-critical stuff. Sure, auto-update. But, and this is the key with logging, he pipes the output to a text file. If something breaks, he can look at the log and see exactly what changed yesterday.
But for the critical stuff, the stuff that keeps the house running.
For the critical systems, he doesn't automate the action, he automates the nag. The script checks for updates, and if they exist, it sends him a reminder.
I think that's a distinction a lot of people miss. Automation doesn't always mean robot does the work. Sometimes it means robot tells human it's time to work.
Precisely. It solves the "I forgot to update for 6 months" problem, but keeps the "don't break my server" control in human hands.
Okay, the third vegetable is cleanup. He calls this the sleeper hit.
This is all about preventing slow-motion disasters.
I love that term. Define a slow motion disaster for us.
Okay, imagine a log file. Every time your server does anything, connects to Wi-Fi, runs a task, it writes a line of text. It's tiny, bytes. You don't even notice it. But over 2 years, that file becomes gigabytes.
And Pi doesn't have infinite storage.
Right. One day, your server just crashes. Not because of a hacker, not because of a bug, but because the hard drive has 0 bytes left. It effectively suffocates on its own diary.
Suffocating on its own diary. That is a vivid image.
Jeff automates the pruning of old logs, rotating backups, which just means deleting the oldest one when a new one is made, and checking disk usage. It's the digital equivalent of sweeping the floor. It's not sexy, but if you don't do it, eventually you're wading through trash.
It removes that background anxiety that the system is fragile. Okay, we've eaten our vegetables. The system is stable. Let's talk about the dessert, the quality of life stuff.
This is where you actually feel the time savings in your day-to-day.
He starts with file sorting. Now, I have a downloads folder that is basically a digital graveyard. I'm scared to even look in there. It's got PDFs, installers, images, zip files. It's a mess.
You and everyone else.
Yeah.
Jeff's solution is scripting the cleanup renaming files, moving PDFs to a documents folder, moving MP4s to videos. But he applies a constraint here that I think is vital for our listeners to understand. He calls it being conservative.
Conservative in this context meaning safe.
Meaning non-destructive. This is the difference between a junior developer and a senior one. A junior dev writes a script that says, if this looks like a duplicate, delete it. A senior dev writes a script that says, if this looks like a duplicate, move it to a folder called possible duplicates and let me decide later.
So the script never pulls the trigger on deletion.
Never. You do not want a background script deleting data unless you are 1000% sure.
Yeah.
His scripts just move things to where they belong so he doesn't have to drag and drop. It just reduces the friction of starting work.
Then there are the notifications. He wants them to be blunt.
Yes. No fancy dashboards, just text. Hey, this SSL certificate expires in a week. Or rotate the security token.
Why is text better here? We have these beautiful notification centers now. Why go back to basics?
Because a beautiful dashboard requires you to decide to go look at it. It's passive. A text message or an email lands in your inbox. It invades your space. It turns a vague anxiety, did I forget something, into a specific action item. It's unignorable.
And finally, sanity checks. This made the Pi feel like a quiet assistant to me.
These are great. It's just a script that asks, does this file exist or did this service respond in the last 10 minutes?
It's like having a friend who just pokes their head in the room, nods, and leaves.
Exactly. It verifies reality. If your backup script ran, but the file size is 0, a sanity check catches that.
Now, we have to pivot. This all sounds great. Clean desk, organized files, backups running. But if you've ever actually tried to write a cron job, you know it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Jeff devotes a section to the rough edges. He says cron can bite.
It certainly can. And we need to get technical for a second here because this is where everyone fails their first time.
Lay it on us.
When you open your terminal and type python script.py, it works. You put that same command in cron and it fails. You check the code is fine, but cron won't run it.
Why? Is cron allergic to Python or something?
No, it's about environment variables. Think of it like cooking. When you cook in your own kitchen, you know where the salt is, you know where the knives are. That's your user environment.
Okay.
Cron is like cooking in a stripped-down industrial kitchen where nothing is labeled and the drawers are empty. It doesn't know where Python is installed. It doesn't know your shortcuts. It has no paths.
So if you just say run Python, cron says, I don't know what that is.
Exactly. So Jeff's fix, and this is standard best practice, is to use absolute paths. Don't say Python. Say you see bin Python 3. Don't say backup.zip. Say home pi backups, backup.zip. You have to be incredibly explicit, telling it exactly where every tool and file lives on the drive.
You have to give it the full address, not just the name. That makes sense. But there's another trap he mentions that I found terrifying. The silent failure.
This is the nightmare scenario. You have a backup script scheduled, it fails. But because it's a background task, it fails politely. It doesn't scream at you. It just doesn't work.
And because you trust the system.
You might go 6 weeks thinking you have backups, only to find out you have nothing when you actually need to restore a file.
That is a chilling thought. So how does he fix that? How do you hear silence?
He uses what he calls a heartbeat job. It's a script that runs daily and just writes a status line, or specifically checks the timestamp of the last backup. If that backup file is older than 24 hours, then it screams.
So the system doesn't need to be loud all the time, but it needs to be honest.
Honest automation. I like that. It's better to have a dumb script that tells you it failed than a smart script that pretends it worked.
Now, speaking of honesty, we have to address the elephant in the room. Not everyone in the comment section was impressed. We're in 2026. This is the era of AI. And here is Jeff writing about cron.
The internet never fails to provide a counterpoint.
We have to mention Alistair, a commenter who posted on February 6th. He basically asked, it's 2026, writing articles on automation with a Pi and Cron tab. The implication being, isn't this ancient history? Why aren't we using AI agents for this?
It's a fair question on the surface. We have tools now that can supposedly understand our intent. But I think Alistair falls into the newer's better trap.
Yeah.
Yes, we have AI agents. But do you want an AI agent hallucinating while it manages your file system?
That's a risky proposition. I thought this tax document looked like poetry, so I deleted it.
Exactly. Cron is 50-year-old tech. It is battle-tested. It's not going to change its API next week. It's not going to introduce a subscription model. It operates on strict logic. For infrastructure, and that's what this is, home infrastructure, you want boring. You want your sewer system to be boring. You want your backups to be boring.
And then there was Chris. He was a bit harsher. He called the article pure fluff and clickbait because Jeff didn't include a GitHub repository. He wanted the code. He wanted to copy-paste the conservative sorting script we just talked about.
And I sympathize with Chris. I really do. He represents the learner profile who learns by doing. If you want to replicate this system tonight, the article is frustrating because it doesn't give you the copy-paste blocks. It's a philosophy piece, not a tutorial.
But is it fair to call it fluff?
I don't think so. I'd argue that the philosophy is actually more valuable here. Look, code is cheap now. You can ask any LLM right now, write me a bash script to move PDF files to a documents folder without overwriting. You'll get the code in seconds.
That's true. The syntax isn't the bottleneck anymore.
The bottleneck is the architecture. Understanding why you should stagger your backup jobs, or why you should prefer text logs over a dashboard. That is the wisdom that you don't get from a generated code snippet. Chris wanted the how, but Jeff gave him the why.
That's a great point. Jeff actually warns against over-automation, too. He says if a task requires judgment, keep it manual.
That's the trap. Trying to script human judgment is where things get brittle. You have to ask, is this file important? Don't write a script for it. Do it yourself. The win isn't replacing the human. It's removing the drudgery so the human can focus on the judgment.
So, pulling this all together, what is the takeaway for the listener who maybe has a Raspberry Pi gathering dust in a drawer or just a messy digital life?
The takeaway is to start small. Jeff says the best part of this approach is that you build it one task at a time. You don't need to architect a massive system on day one. You add a backup job, you validate it, you move on.
He has this great line in the conclusion. It's the difference between intending to be organized and actually being organized.
That hits home. We all intend to be organized, but intention doesn't clean hard drives. Cron jobs do.
So here's my question for you and for everyone listening. We talked about the silent failure, the risk that a process fails quietly and you don't know until it's too late. I want you to think about your own work or even your personal life. What processes have failed silently recently simply because they were too quiet? Maybe it's a subscription you forgot to cancel or a habit you stopped doing without noticing. And would a dumb solution like a simple text file log or a blunt reminder have saved you from a headache?
It's worth checking. Sometimes the smartest solution is the one that's just smart enough to tell you it's broken.
A huge thanks to Jeff Butts and XDA developers for this deep dive into the world of boring automation. And thanks to you for listening. Go forth and automate cautiously.
And check your logs.
See you next time on The Deep Dive.